Welcome to the Wonder With Me podcast, where I, Dr. Tonia Winchester, invite you to get curious with me about all things mind-body healing, especially how we can unlock the incredible healing power of our unconscious minds, so that we can all get out of stress mode and go back into healing mode. We'll talk about how you can easily create healthy, sustainable self-care habits so that you can calm your mind, sleep deeply, wake rested, and enjoy happy, energized days. Ultimately, so that you can make a bigger difference in your well-being and that of your family and the world around you. These casual chats are for educational purposes only and don't constitute a therapeutic relationship. With all that said, let's get this episode underway. Come wonder with me. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Wonder With Me podcast. I am your hostess, Dr. and/or Coach Tonia Winchester. This is the place where we turn little life moments into big life lessons, and this is episode 46. That's easy for you to say. This is not the first time I've recorded this episode. I think I'm bumping up against some resistance about actually putting this story out there into the world, and I mentioned that I'd be doing this in episode number 45. And integrity is important to me, doing what I said I was going to do, keeping my promises, making promises I can keep, mind you. So I am going to keep my promise and share this story. I'm doing so because I think it might be helpful to other people, turning my mess into a message. I was originally going to script in an apology for the subject matter that I'm about to share. And then there was this very loud and fierce voice inside me that was like, oh, you are not going to be apologizing for this. What's about to happen is a personal account of my biggest health challenge that I've had in my life. And it is all about women's health. We're going to be talking about periods and things that go along with that. I mentioned in episode 45 that I've only shared this story publicly one time, which was on a podcast for somebody else several years ago. But I became ready to share this story with my audience recently after not one, but several conversations over the years that have this tone, and these are conversations with patients primarily, that have this tone of, that's easy for you to say, you're a naturopathic doctor. As if that excludes me from being human and excludes me from having struggles and excludes me from having vulnerabilities and susceptibilities. I am a living mortal like anybody, and just because I have health as my highest value, which I talked about in episode 45, and just because I've spent the last 2 decades figuring out what works for my body and crafting very specific habits for that, anyone can do these things. I'm speaking to this energy of, that's easy for you to say, because I want to set the tone of, I am not without flaws or hardship. I have overcome a lot, and in that overcoming, I hope there's some information, some learning, some knowings that you can incorporate into your own mental body, emotional body, and physical body so that actually changes your biochemistry. That's what this is all about. When I was a kid, I was really sick. As an infant, I had some sort of pseudo-meningitis that didn't really end up getting figured out. I was having seizures and eventually it sort of resolved, but nobody knew why or what was happening. As a child, I was on countless rounds of antibiotics, countless rounds. I don't remember a time when there was not banana biotics in the fridge. Ear infections. I started getting skin infections. I would get these staph infections, these huge mass golf ball size balls of pus in my armpits that would then be lanced in the doctor's office. Back in the day when doctors actually touched their patients. I was covered in eczema. Oh, I should mention one of these staph infections landed me in the hospital. I was on IV antibiotics in an isolation room for about a week when I was 14 or 15. I had a weird type of mono that they couldn't figure out where it came from. I'm 44 and I've had shingles twice, when I was 22 and again when I was 32. My immune system was a mess from the moment I was born. And I've spent a long time getting my immune system back into balance so that it's not over or underreactive. In our province, there's this online database that you can go and look back on your health history and see what doctors you saw and if there's any sort of current imaging reports or blood work and lists of medications. And I actually went into that database the other day, and it starts in 1995, and I'm looking back and I'm just seeing all of these medications that I was on back then, steroid creams and prednisone and the birth control pill, which I'm going to come to in just a second, and naproxen for the terrible menstrual cramps that I had, which is really what this episode is going to be focused about. Rounds and rounds of antibiotics, and oh my gosh. And now my health history is mostly vacant. The odd time I might get a bit of blood work, but it's nothing like what it was back then. So my biggest challenge in my own health has been my menstrual cycles. From the moment I started menstruating, the medical term for this is menarche or menarche, at age 11, I had inebriatingly painful periods. Because I'm a believer in mind-body medicine and this top-down approach of thinking, feeling, doing, and then changing our cellular health in that order, that's the formula of health: mental body, emotional body, physical, biochemical. I've talked about that many times. I'll, of course, link in the show notes for you. I look back in my biography and I'm taking note of very interesting moments. So the moment I got my period, it was Christmas Eve. It was a month before I turned 12. And when I told my mom, she said, "Oh, great." Like I had suddenly been doomed to a life of misery. That stands out for me. I think these moments matter. You can take what you will from this. This is my own personal account and my own personal experience. Throughout high school, my periods were so intense that I would often pass out. It was a great excuse to get out of gym, by the way. Admittedly, I was often grateful to get out of what my gym teacher called a jog in the bog, which is exactly what it sounded like. We would go for a jog in the bog by the school. So admittedly, I can see a positive benefit of this behavior that my body was exhibiting, getting out of the bog jogs. Okay. Towards the end of high school, my doctor and my mom and I decided that I should go on the birth control pill. I was about to become sexually active with my then boyfriend, so that was part of it, but really it was to control my cycles. And so for 5 years I was on the pill, and for 5 years I didn't have any problems with my periods because the birth control was masking what was going on with my own body. When I came off the pill when I was about 22, things got so much worse. Every time I had my period, I would vomit for 2 to 3 days, often actually having diarrhea at the same time. This is me sitting on a toilet with a bucket with fluids projecting out of both ends. I would be in so much pain. All I could do was writhe around in bed. I couldn't eat. I couldn't stomach anything. I don't know how many times I had to cancel plans, cancel trips. There's at least 3 occasions that I remember when I would be just green in a visit with a patient, excuse myself, and then go vomit in the washroom. Only the people that were closest to me knew about this. This was something I tried to hide from most people because I carried a lot of shame around it. I carried shame about being a naturopathic doctor and having this horrendous thing that I could not manage overtake me every month. Actually, more regularly than every month. My cycle tended to be short, so every 23 days, 24 days this was happening. And I tried all of the things, all of the herbal medicines, all of the acupuncture, pelvic floor dysfunction, physiotherapy, homeopathic remedies, counseling, talk therapy, energy medicine, body talk. On and on and on it went. over the years, I would go through periods of being very proactive about it. Yes, I'm going to freaking solve this. I'm going to heal this. I'm going to cure this. My body can do this. And then getting nowhere and getting so frustrated and tossing up my hands and then just resolving that this was going to be my fate until I stop having my periods in menopause. And I would see medical doctors and often get this very weird, it's just you. You're fine approach, which I know exists because I hear it from patients all of the time. They're perfect on paper. They're fine, and yet they feel like garbage. So while not having to do with my head at all in terms of a migraine that we would typically associate with a headache, I called these menstrual migraines, which is what they were like, but in my uterus. So I never talked about this before because I had so much shame around it. And I've been doing some digital sweeping up and decluttering and going through some old blog posts from my original website and actually came across a draft folder. And after I recorded this episode the first time, I came across this draft post that I'd never posted called How I Healed My Period from 2014. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, but I didn't heal my periods in 2014. That came later, and I will share that story by the end of this episode. And the crazy thing as I read this article, and I'm actually going to read it out loud to you verbatim from how I wrote it 10 years ago, is that I had glimmers of optimism around it at times. But like I say, it was going to be another 7 years before things actually fully resolved, and not even fully at that point. I would say at this point now, 10 years later, is when I feel like I'm clear and out of the woods of this. So even then, I knew that it wasn't real. It wasn't complete. It still had something to go on its journey. I had something to go on my journey yet. It's easy for you to say the anticipation of what the next cycle was going to be like, the anticipation of the pain, the thinking ahead of what I was going to have to cancel, miss, reschedule every single month. Here's this article from 2014 that I never published. I have a secret that only a few people know. I'm about to share it with you. The reason I'm showing you what's under my dress is because I think my story can help you. That was cute, under my dress. What a cute little thing I said. To be clear, I have told this story before, but I always pretended like it happened to a patient of mine. But truly, it's my story, and I'm ready to own it. I've been afraid to share it because I thought it made me look weak and worse, like a hypocrite. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I can't have any health problems. I'm supposed to be the perfect model of health, right? I feel sorry for you if you answered yes to that question. I'm a human, and I'm flawed, and I have health problems. I grew up with terrible periods, pain so bad I would often vomit for hours on end. Occasionally I would faint. My periods terrified me. How badly was it going to affect what I had planned this cycle? There was nothing anatomically wrong. Everything was ruled out. Fibroids, PCOS, endometriosis. I was perfect on paper, but for 2 days a month, my body would devastate me with such a violent response to something that was supposed to be perfectly normal for women. My relationship with my cycle changed one day, like a light switch. I woke up and broke up with this man who I knew in my heart of hearts was not the man for me. We'd been dating for about 8 months. Why? I'm not sure. Comfort? Fear of being alone? Fear of never finding anything better? Who knows? After I called it off, my periods came and went and I barely noticed them. No more pain, no more nausea. I never vomited, and I stayed conscious the entire time, except when I was sleeping. This was true for an entire year. I began to forget that I ever had any trouble with them. This was profound and was not my first personal experience with the concept of the power of mind-body medicine. But holy bananas, one major self-honoring, self-loving, self-caring decisions and years of agony, distress, fear, and rage disappeared. When I started dating again, mild symptoms slowly returned. Interesting, I thought. And also, shit. Am I destined to never be in a relationship again? Is my uterus going to cause problems for the rest of my life? Am I not supposed to be with a man? I thought about all of these questions. Worse, when I started dating my now husband, the symptoms intensified. Double shit. This flavor of this relationship was so different from that previous one. I actually liked this guy. I loved him, in fact, and admittedly had for years before we ever dated. This relationship was easy, fun, mutual bliss. He was a partner in the true sense of the word. Why would my girly parts be so angry? Again, this was not just any man. I'm pretty sure he was the man. Was there something else going on? I had a feeling it wasn't about the man, but about something more internal, more sacred. This question wouldn't be answered until years later. Each month I endured the torment, not being able to ingest any substance for 48 hours, rejecting anything I tried to consume. I would writhe in pain and pray for it to end. Eventually it would, and I would get my life back to normal, after apologizing for whatever commitments I had to break to remain in bed. One spring, I took an online course called Reversing Our Curse, taught by a woman named Sarah Avant Stover. This course taught us how to use meditation and yoga to heal the pain around our cycles. Essentially, it was a course in self-care. During the 4 months of the program, things started to shift. I'd skip a month without vomiting. Pain would be less intense and not last as long. After the program ended, things started to slip backwards. The structure of the program was good for me to keep me accountable, but as soon as those virtual walls came down, I slipped down on my own priority list again. A few months later, I decided to start meditating just a few minutes every morning. This actually came out of a meeting with a life coach. I was explaining to her that I wasn't finding joy in all the exciting stuff I had going on with my business. We put together a morning routine that included a bit of fun and a bit of self-reflection. This became my NNTT, my non-negotiable Tonia time. And cycle after cycle was better and better. The latest one I had before writing this was almost a non-event. I was able to eat normally, feel pretty comfortable, and even the flow was less. And so just recently I figured out the answer to that question. My body is an incredible divine creature, and she is sensitive. And she is my best teacher and my best guide. She is astutely aware of decisions and behaviors that act against what is in her heart and how she needs to look after herself. Like I suspected, it wasn't the fact that I was with a man again, in a relationship again, but with that new relationship came shifts in my energy and time that I dedicated to my own self-care, eating foods my body didn't like, dedicating less time to me, agreeing to things that weren't my favorite because I wanted to be a supportive partner. As wonderful as my husband is, I still need to put myself first, and when I do that, my body responds with more energy, better sleep, weight loss, and delightful periods. To compare the entire relationship with that first boyfriend was the error, the oversight. Nothing was right there. I never realized at the time that I broke up with that boyfriend that it would turn into what I feel is like my life's work. Incredibly, I have the framework within naturopathic medicine, the main tenet of which is to treat the root cause, treat the whole person as an individual in the context of their environment to help others reduce suffering in their lives. The final sentence of this article from 2004, which was never published, is, "This is why I've created this course, Your Delightful Life. I want to teach women how to prioritize themselves again so that they can live a healthy life that lights them up on all levels." That course, by the way, is still available. This article never saw the light of day. It's been sitting in this draft folder for 10 years because I knew that it wasn't true. Part of it is true. There is a little glimmer of truth in this, but I knew in my heart of hearts and in my uterus that this problem had not yet resolved. Fast forward 7 years, 2021, after COVID. Well, during COVID, who's kidding who? And for some reason, I found again the gumption to pursue this medically. I met with a locum doctor who, when hearing about my symptoms, these menstrual migraines as I called them, believed me and took me seriously. And it wasn't long before I had an ultrasound. She triaged me in pretty quickly, and it wasn't long after that that I was scheduled for surgery. they'd found some fibroids in my uterus. Interesting, because I'd had an ultrasound it was actually when I was dating that boyfriend that I was talking about. That would have been 2006. I had an ultrasound back then and nothing came of it. There was no information provided to me, whether it fell through the cracks or there was nothing there. So anyways, these fibroids are discovered in January of 2021. Who knows how long they'd been there? If they were a part of the symptom pattern, I don't know. And the only reason I question that is because of the previous ultrasound being unremarkable, or at least undisclosed to me. So I was scheduled for surgery to have these fibroids removed. It was offered to me to have the conclusive solution of a hysterectomy. And I know I'm not alone, because I talked to a lot of women about this, and a lot of women talk to me about this, that they don't feel that removing an organ is necessary, because they, like I believe that their bodies can heal, want to, and know how. And this was certainly me in this moment. I rejected the conclusive solution of the hysterectomy and opted just for the fibroidectomy. I met with the gynecologist, who told me that he was going to have fun in the surgery using this new device, which was a camera attached to a bunch of spinning blades. And he said it would be fun because it would be like playing video games in my uterus. Thank you. Thank you for that. I really appreciate your professionalism. That aside, my surgery was rescheduled twice, but it was already remarkable that from January until it was scheduled that it happened so fast. Again, someone was finally taking me seriously. Now, in this time between January and when I actually ended up having this surgery, I did my first level of my neurolinguistic programming training, plus a training on how to teach me to become a coach, how to take what I learned in my practitioner course and apply it to a very time-tested, effective process. This is called the breakthrough process, which I now love taking clients through, which helps people get traumas out of their bodies, old, negative, unresolved emotions out of their bodies, and limiting decisions out of their bodies. If we go back to the formula for health, nutrients in, wastes out, mentally, emotionally, physically, biochemically. And when we do this, when we follow this formula of getting nutrients in and wastes out, the body goes back into healing mode happily and easily. So during the coaching training portion of this, we did exchanges. I was a coach and coached someone through the breakthrough process, and I was a client and got coached through the breakthrough process. I didn't know I had trauma, to be honest. I grew up in a family where generally we got along. I had a lot of advantages. I had parents who loved me, and yet my unconscious mind brought forth a whole host of examples of experiences where, when I was young, I interpreted what happened as trauma. Gabor Mate, in his book, The Myth of Normal, describes small t trauma, the moments when we're not held, when we're upset, or if we're neglected or ignored because somebody's busy or someone else is sick. X, Y, Z, on and on. Frankly, it doesn't matter how big or significant it is to other people, it's what our own unconscious minds do with that. Because of the surgeries being pushed back twice, the way it ended up working out was that within 2 weeks, I'd had my first breakthrough, mind-body healing coaching breakthrough, and the video game fibroidectomy surgery. And my next cycle was markedly better. Pain, but not inebriating, not to the point of inducing vomiting, no diarrhea, no downtime, no bedridden for 3 days. I continued to use the tools of neurolinguistic programming as part of the ongoing habit-building self-care practice that I really wanted to embody and walk my walk in. And each cycle got better and better. Now, there's minds out there that are going to hear this story and say, well, it was the surgery that fixed you. I'm not discounting that it was part of this healing process for me, but it was a moment in time. And again, if I'd had the same symptoms for 30 years effectively, with an ultrasound 10 years before that didn't catch fibroids, or I didn't know that it had caught fibroids, it doesn't tell the whole picture. Please admit as you're listening to this that the surgery alone does not tell the whole story. I had no surgery before I broke up with that boyfriend and had a year of flawless, enjoyable cycles. So over the last 3.5 years, every single cycle I've had is better and better and better and better. This most recent one, I was like, do I even count these as cramps? Does like a 0.25 out of 10 for like 2 hours count? Since my first breakthrough as a client in 2021, as a student, I think I've had 4 or 5 more, just spread out throughout the last 3.5 years. But I have daily practices now that are so different in how I think, in how I respond, in how I set boundaries, and how I take care of myself, and how I communicate, and how I listen, and how I react. Everything is different. And I think it is these consistent daily changes that I am carefully curating, experimenting, what's working, what's not working over time, that has led each subsequent cycle to be better and better and better. I don't attribute that to the surgery. I'm grateful I had it, and yet it's been my daily internal and external work that has contributed to the healing that I have undergone. Here's an example, a metaphor, if you will. Say you were going to make tomato sauce. You might know that the approach to tomato sauce is a slow, steady simmer over several hours where the fruit sugars reduce and the sauce becomes sweeter over time. The flavors meld and you end up with this beautiful, fragrant, flavorful sauce. By the way, I'm allergic to tomatoes. They also do what potatoes do to me, which is create what seems like a foot fungus. Episode 45 is a reference. But first, you have to cut the tomatoes open. You cube up the tomatoes before you put them in the pot. Or take the skin off them before you put them in there. There has to be some sort of opening first step. And I'm going to liken that to this surgery. It was a catalyst. It was a moment in time. It was literally cutting something out of me. But my internal, external daily work is what over time has changed things to this point where I blink and my period's over. And I can talk about this for the first time in a way that I feel encouraged by. I kept having these things in my mind. Well, when I get to a year of pain-free periods, that's going to be the milestone. And that's when I recorded the podcast that I did as a guest, which I'll link in the show notes. But even then, I still didn't feel convinced. And it's like this article in 2014. I'm not convinced of this. I'm not ready to publish this yet. Okay, when I get to 2 years of pain-free periods, then I'm going to be okay to talk about this. And even then, I was like, oh. Okay, when I get to 3 years, then I'm going to be ready to share this story. And nope, still wasn't. But I feel good now. I feel good now. Obviously, I've spent a lot of time recording this. This is the longest episode on this podcast I've ever shared. I think about all the things I've done in the last 3 years that I wouldn't have been able to do before. I have a steady and regular commitment with my dance partner. We practice several times a week. We've gone on several travel trips together to get training in other places. All of those came to pass. I never once had to step out, bow out, cancel, reschedule. All of that has been able to play out. This partnership wouldn't have been possible previous to these two things happening at the same time. That surgery, the physical surgery, and then I'm going to actually call this the mental emotional surgery that I had too, because that's what it was like. Me donating blood, episode 45, that wouldn't have been possible. I was hemorrhaging so much every cycle. There was no way my hemoglobin would have been adequate to donate. No way. I share this story because I think it might help you. I share this story because it's not just easy for me to say. I'm figuring shit out just like you are. I might just be a few steps ahead on this journey than you, which is why I'm happy to be a guide. This is the power of integrative medicine, of the blend of Western medicine and more contemporary, esoteric, traditional philosophies, they all kind of merge into one. Science is catching up, I think, with some of these old traditional ideas. But this is the power of belief in mind-body medicine. This is the power of the belief of daily habits. This is the power of curating a self-care routine that is effective for you. It's not just easy for me to say. Should you choose to let it, it could be easy for you to say and do too. I'm going to leave this episode there. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here and getting curious about you, your health, your wellness. I will catch you in the next episode of the Wonder With Me podcast. I'm going to be sharing a whole host of really cool changes that have happened since starting doing some new work. Full expose, episode 47. Until then, may you choose to make all of your dreams come true. Hey, thanks for wondering with me today. If you've got something good out of this, then please forward this episode along to the people who you know could benefit. Be sure to subscribe, and if you're really keen, you leaving us a rating and review helps us to help more people, so thank you in advance for that. If you're wanting more insights about how you can leverage the power of your unconscious mind to go back into healing mode, head on over to toniawinchester.com, where you'll find my book, Breakthrough the Insomnia Cycle, and other helpful ideas. Thanks again, and we'll connect on the next episode of the Wonder With Me podcast. In the meantime, may you choose to make all of your dreams come true.